We are the student advisors from De Montfort University, and today we are going to be talking about student finance, and we're going to try and wrap this all up in about 20 minutes. Now, obviously, normally we would obviously come over to you and talk about student finance in person, but current circumstances have stopped us from doing that. So hopefully you find this video really, really interesting. I've got a whole team of people that are going to help me break down all the ins and outs of student finance. And the first person that we're going to go over to today is Jamie Bradford, who's going to explain exactly what a tuition fee loan is.
Yeah, hi everyone. So everyone knows that university has got tuition fees attached. So unlike the rest of your school career so far, it's not free, there are fees. But the great thing is you don't have to turn up on day one with a pot of money and pay your fees up front. So the onus isn't on parents to have the cash available. There is a fee loan that allows a student going to university to borrow the money from the government through a group called Student Finance England, borrow the whole of those fees. The tuition fees are £9,250, and they are pretty much flat at that across the majority of universities. You borrow the fee from the government. They pay those fees straight to the university whilst you're studying. So for the whole of the time at university, you haven't got to physically pay those fees. The course costs you nothing in the short term, so the cash flow isn't impacted at all. And then those fees are repaid after graduation back to the government alongside other money that you borrowed as well. So the fee loan makes university accessible to everybody out there who wants to go to university, and it reduces the barriers of the financial impact of the fact that university has tuition fees. And we'll talk about how you apply for those fees in just a moment. So hopefully that helps you sort of not worry so much that you've got to find this amount of money and have ready cash available to pay those fees up front. Nearly every single student borrows it and then pays it back after graduation.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jamie. So you talked a little bit there about obviously the tuition fee loans, and a lot of questions we get from students is exactly what do the tuition fees actually pay for at university? So to give you a quick rundown over that, the tuition fees pay for obviously contact time with academic staff and support staff, a variety of support services available at the university. It offers access to things like the library, both in physical resources and online resources, access to computer systems and IT systems, the Students' Union, access to some of your exams because there's a big cost attached to those as well as numerous investments across the university in terms of sort of physical supporting facilities that you can access if you're doing something slightly more practical, as well as other investments around the campus. Something else that becomes quite important when you're looking at student finance and something to consider when you're looking at university is also the living costs. Nicola, could you talk a little bit about living costs at university?
Of course, thank you. So one of the most expensive things you're going to be paying for if you do decide to move out for university is your rent. Obviously, that will vary depending on where in the country you are and what type of halls you decide to choose. You'll also have bills to pay for, so things like your phone, your gas, your electric, your water, internet, TV license, etc. You've got food and groceries to start paying for, potentially for the first time ever. Transport costs. So for instance, if you are living far away from university, you'll have to travel in and out of campus, and then also potentially traveling home, seeing friends, that type of thing. There's transport costs associated. You'll also need to pay for things like course materials, so whether that's books, textbooks, practical supplies, or if you are in an arts degree, something like that, you'll have art materials associated. You'll have clothes and toiletries to start paying for, and you may even consider getting out insurance, so whether that's on your accommodation or your phone, that type of thing. Insurance is always something to consider as well.
Gosh, that sounds like a lot that students need to think about paying for at university. How are they going to afford it all? Dal, how are they going to afford it all?
So what you got to look for is your maintenance loan. So your maintenance loan will help support you whilst you're at university. So the list that Nicola just went through there, to be able to pay for all of that, what you do is go towards your maintenance loan. So what you do initially is check out your eligibility for your maintenance loan on the Student Loans Company website. It's up to you how you choose to spend this maintenance loan. So it could go on your living costs, it could go on just general stuff that you might need to support you at university. What happens is it's paid directly into the student's bank account in 3 installments. So it's not something that's given to you on a monthly basis. So the onus is on the student now to budget their money accordingly. So it's provided based on where you choose to study, where you choose to live, and based on where those decisions that you make, it will also differ in terms of the amount that you'll be eligible for. So it's means tested based on household income. So they'll have a look at how much money is going into your house, and student loans company then will assess the amount that you're entitled to. If you're thinking about studying in London and you're going to be living in London, you'd usually get a little bit more. So as you can see on the graph here, so it's your household income to this. If there's 2 people living within the house, we'll take that into consideration. If you're living at home, it's the first column you're looking at. And if you're living away from home, it's the second column.
So that sounds like a lot of information that students need to sort of gather in terms of student finance, but how do they apply for it all? And there's a very handy website that students will use when it comes to actually applying for their student finance. So we're going to go over to Faye Shears, who's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so to actually make your application, it's usually around about the February time that you do that, and the link that you would need is gov.uk/ and it's student finance in there. So do check that out. If you do just type it into Google, it will bring you to the government website. So that's the one where you need to go to actually apply for student finance. Now you need to create an account. So you need to have a customer reference number and also create a password. So just make sure that you do remember that, pop it somewhere, write it down so that you can log in whenever you need to. Usually the deadline for actually getting your student finance on time for the start of term is in May. So you'll be reminded of that closer to the time. If you are signed up to student finance, they will send you alerts and reminders. You'll need to pop in your email address. So something that you check regularly, your passport number if you have one. If you don't have one, then you might have to send in your original birth certificate. You'll need the university that you wish to apply to and the course as well. If you're not sure at the point of applying which university and which course that you exactly want to do, you just put the best case scenario and you can amend that later. You'll also need to pop on there your national insurance number, your bank details, which you can update later anyway when you open a student bank account. We'll also need some sponsor contact details, so essentially who you live with, so if that's mum or dad, or whoever you live with who takes care of you, pays the bills, they are your sponsors. So Student Finance England needs to be able to contact those to firm up a few details about things like household income. Also on here, you can put any information in there about, anything health related. So if you're applying for something like DSA, which is disability support, you can share this information with them so that, they can let you know what's available, what kind of timeframes there are as well. Remind your sponsor as well. So when you do submit your application, remind your sponsor to look out for an email relating to student finance so that you have filled in your section and then they've filled in their section as well. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Faye, for covering that. So hopefully that's given you some information about how you apply for student finance. So one of the other big questions that students often have surrounding student finance is the repayments. We've talked about quite a lot of money so far, with tuition fees being over £9,000 and then all that maintenance loan that you will get to support yourself at university. But when do you have to repay and how much are you looking to repay? Tay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ben. So remember, the tuition loan and also the maintenance loan is consolidated into one loan, so you'd be paying at the same time. These repayments don't start until the April after you have graduated. So if you have graduated over the summer, you would have to wait until the next year, April, and that's when you would be starting to pay back. And also another thing to remember is you would only be paying back this tuition loan and fees is after you have start earning £26,000, £575 a year, and you would only be paying, nothing on that yet. But if you start earning £27,000, £575, you would be only paying £7.50 monthly and £90 annually. So when you look at that in terms of how much you would be paying back, there's not much that you are paying back, and you won't even notice the money coming out of your bank because it's not much when you think about overall. Also, it would only be the 9% of what you are actually earning over that £26,000. And remember, the tuition loan is cancelled after 30 years. So when you are 50, it is cancelled. So you don't really, if you haven't paid, your full back, then don't worry about it. It will be cancelled, and that's going to be behind you.
Perfect. Thank you very much there, Tay, for looking at the repayments. We're really smashing through all these different topics now. So the next thing that we do want to just very, very quickly touch upon as well is the student loan interest rates. So I'm going to go back over to Jamie, who's got the most exciting topic of the session to talk about interest rates.
This is the bit we all fight over. We all want to talk about the interest rates. It's fascinating. Just a quick recap before we do that. So far, you've learned there are tuition fees for university. They're typically £9,250, but the tuition fee loan allows you to always borrow that money from the government and not have to pay it up front. You've learned about what the students actually spend their money on, the accommodation, the course costs, the living costs. You've also learned there's a pot of money to cover you for living costs by the maintenance loan and for extra pots of money through disability support and those types of things. And you've learned that the repayments after graduation are in one pot and are a manageable repayment per week, per month, per year, so won't have massive impact on your day-to-day finances. There are, however, interest rates applied to those loans right from the moment that you borrow them. I'm hoping that somewhere to my right or my left, there we are, magically a graphic will appear. So whilst you're studying, the interest rate is the retail price index of inflation, which is currently 2.4% plus 3. Once you're graduated, if you're earning less than that sort of trigger point of 26,575, but it's just retail price index. If you're earning between 26,575 and 47,835, it's RPI plus up to 3. It's like a sliding scale. And if you're earning above 47,835 post-graduation, 1, well done you, and 2, your interest rate will be RPI plus 3. Being honest, the average graduating student is not really aware of these figures as they're moving forward because the amount is linked to your income and you're paying it out per week, per month, and not really noticing the repayments come out. But just for your info, to understand how the interest works, this is where it sits, and this is the interest rates that are applicable from the point you borrow it through your graduation career as well. Back to you in the studio, Ben.
Thank you very much, Jamie. You had really the most exciting task of this whole video was to talk about interest rates. So
I made more of it than I was. You noticed that. I made it. There we are.
You did, really fleshing that out. So the last couple of bits that we want to sort of cover is looking at what happens if the maintenance loan isn't quite enough to support you. And also we're going to look very quickly at sort of scholarships and bursaries to keep an eye out for when you are looking to apply to university. Tay, we're going to go back over to you just to look a little bit at what you can do to support yourself on top of that maintenance loan.
Yeah, so thank you. If you don't have enough money and you're worried about where you can get money from, for the first instance, parental support. You know, if you can ask your parents, and if your parents can help you, that's always great things. For example, if you need for them to drive you to uni instead of getting the train, which can cost you a lot of money, especially if you're somewhere far from, you know, London or from up north, definitely ask your parents to help you out, or even helping you with prepare meals or things like that, which can save you a lot of time and also money whilst you're at university. Another thing is also to apply for scholarships, bursaries, and grants. You know, depending on what university, look into what kind of scholarships that they do, you know, offer to you, and what kind of bursaries and grants that are available for you. We will talk about this a bit later on. Another thing is, if the money is not enough, you can always get a part-time job either within the university. For example, at Montfort University, we have the Montfort University ambassadors, or you can get a part-time job in and around the city. So for example, in Leicester, the campus is only 5 minutes away, so you can get shops in retail stores, for example, like New Look or any places, those kind of places. Another thing is also looking at interest-free overdrafts. Now, depending on what bank you get you're with, you can get interest-free overdrafts. With, for example, I was with Santander, and they do have an overdraft of £2,000 without paying anything over. And they also have schemes like, for example, rail cards, where you can get a lot of discounts. And this would be really helpful if you are moving away from home and you would be traveling back and forth. So that can save you a lot of money. Another thing is, you know, if you are struggling with university, you have run out of money for some reason, and there has something that has popped up, you can apply for hardship funds from university. And obviously this is for serious financial difficulties, but these are there in order to help you. Back to you, Ben.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So the very last thing that we want to talk about here on this video is scholarships, bursaries, and grants. And I'm going to go back over to Faye, who's going to wrap everything up, talking a little bit about that.
We've touched upon scholarships and bursaries. Just to flag, they do not need to be repaid. They're usually for things like high achievement, or it could be something to do with your personal circumstances. So just as a bit of an example of what we offer at De Montfort University, we have the Global High Flyer Scholarship. So that is £1,000 towards one of our international trips if you achieve a certain number of UCAS points. You've also got things like the sports scholarship as well. So if you are an avid sports player and you meet the criteria, then you might be eligible for that as well. And there's other things that, you know, you might get free pots of money for. It might be more to do with if you are, you know, a care leaver or estranged from your family, or perhaps you're doing a specific course. So if you're doing something healthcare related, so anything like nursing, midwifery, for example, there are pots of money out there available to you to support you. And that could be for travel costs, for living costs. No one actually tells you what you need to spend the scholarship or the bursary on. So that's for you to decide. It goes straight to your bank account. And remember, these do not need to be repaid. To find out how you can access these, go on to university websites, so the ones that you're interested in, start doing a bit of research, because these come from the university as opposed to the government. Now, you might find there's some more local ones around as well. So it might be something to do with your town or where you live, or the village that you're from, wherever it might be that you are currently residing. It might be that you can access something, whether it's a vegetarian society scholarship for going to university for the first time. It could be that it's from a company who works within computer science, and they're offering free pots of money to students going and studying something to do with computer science. So there are some very interesting ones out there. It's about starting to think outside of the box and putting that time in to do the research.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We've got through all of those topics really, really quickly. So I think it's time for some quick fire Q&A stuff that we can sort of cover in the last few minutes. So first question that I've got for you all is student loan like any other debt?
No, not at all. One, because it's linked directly to your income, not to the amount that you've borrowed, which makes it massively different to your mortgage or your credit card, which is linked to the amount you've borrowed. Two, it doesn't carry a credit rating, so you can buy a house, borrow money to buy a car, have a credit card, whilst you're still ticking off your student loan. And I did all of those things while I was repaying mine. And finally, it's repaid. If it's not repaid after 30 years, the government writes it off. Whereas again, those other types of debt, you'd have to keep on paying until you finish paying off the whole of that debt. And it doesn't pass on to anybody else if you're no longer in a position to pay. So absolutely not like other debt, much more like a tax to your income post-graduation, and it is like a pot of money you borrowed.
Perfect. Second question. What happens if I drop out of university?
So if you do drop out of university, it's not essential that you would have to pay for the whole time that you are supposed to be there. So if that's 3 years, for example, you drop out in your first year, you're not expected to pay for second or third year. Same as if you drop out in your first year, you're not expected to pay for second semester, third semester as well. So that's something you need to have. You need to have a conversation with the university about that, so that they can decide, what is the next step. Any financial repercussions for leaving university. And remember, if you do drop out, the same applies, that you will only start repaying for any tuition fees or maintenance loan that you borrowed when you're earning a certain amount of money.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Universities are massively supportive places, and we do everything we can to help stop you dropping out in the first place. There's support with your financial management, there's support with your course and your degree in all different ways, there's support with your accommodation, your welfare, there's counselling, there's disability support services. So universities are massively supportive places. It really isn't sink or swim. So we do everything we can to help you succeed in your degree and try and minimise the dropout rate as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Last question then, I think, is what happens with your student loan if you move abroad?
I guess I moved abroad, and after I graduated, so I was still liable to tell Student Finance England where I was, what I was doing, how much I was earning, so that they could determine how much money that I should repay them. So if you do move abroad, you do still have to be in touch with them. So just a little bit of advice there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. So hopefully we have covered in this very short video, quick fire, everything to do with student finance. We are going to be joining you on a Q&A session on Thursday. So do make sure you check us out for that. If you've got any other questions about student finance, a couple of us will be there just to answer 1 or 2 questions. So thank you very much to my fantastic team of student advisors. Last couple of bits I just want to mention with regards to this. Faye talked about student finance earlier. That's the link that you need to head over to. So do make a note of that if you want to find out any more information about student finance. Just there, you can contact Student Finance England using that telephone number. So again, make a quick note of that. If you want to ask us any questions, you can get in touch with myself, Faye, Dal, or Taya Nikila using the link on the screen there using our chat service, which is an absolutely fantastic way to ask us any questions. It might be about student finance, it might be about admissions, it might be about some of the courses. Do drop us a line. And lastly, we're quite used to doing these as live streams at this point. It's a bit strange that we're actually just doing this to, well, nobody at the minute because it's a pre-record. But if you do want to interact with us live on some of our live streams, you can get in touch with us using this link just here, and you can obviously join us on any of our live events that way. So thank you very much for joining us on this video here. We hope you found it useful, and we will see you, well, when we see you. Bye-bye.